Now this, of course, is the Gerber Centerdrive. Now this has been reviewed quite a few times all across YouTube. Just feel free to go check out any of those reviews. This is going to be a summation. We're going to go through it real fast. We're going to explain exactly what is good, exactly what is bad, and we're going to do one more. We're actually going to modify this tool and improve it the way I think it should have been done in the first place. Now, the Gerber Centerdrive has been reviewed quite a few times over the last couple of years, so I'm not going to be necessarily repeating everything that was said there, but I want to make some highlights, starting with the pros. The pros are that it's an out-the-front design, meaning it has a very, very strong and ergonomic plier head that is one-handed accessible. And it also has, in addition to that, two other implements that are easy to access one-handed. The first one is a very, very long 420HC blade. And contrary to popular belief, this is actually a very good blade from my experience with other multi-tool blades. And the second part here is the Centerdrive center axis bit holder. And yeah, it's really, really good. I've used it a number of times and been very, very pleased with how tough it is and the fact that it is surprisingly useful. It's surprisingly similar of an experience to using a screwdriver, and I really do appreciate that. Now, in addition to the pliers, the bit holder, and the blade, I can't say anything else that's particularly good about this tool. And I know people are going to get upset about this. I know a lot of people love the Gerber Centerdrive, but in this video, I'm also going to be very clear about what I think was a major miss. And that starts with what you see missing here, and that is the cutters themselves. Now, these are the cutters that come with it, and they are carbide with a hardwire cutter notch. And if you've never used these before, allow me to explain that the first time you cut anything reasonably difficult with it, they're going to crack on you. In fact, this is the second pair I had, and the last one, they cracked so quickly, I just kind of got annoyed and gave up on them. That is the first and major problem with these. Now, many people have talked to Gerber about them. They've communicated, they left messages on their Instagram and so on. And so far, it's kind of silence when it comes to replacing them. Now, you might think, oh, well, then they have to invent something. And turns out, no, they don't. These are actually made right here in the United States. And I'll put a link to them down in the description. These are actually high-speed steel cutters. Now, these cutters fit perfectly in the Gerber Centerdrive, and they are ridiculously tough. Like, I cut a couple nails with them, and I can't even tell where I did that. And the other thing is, if you accidentally damage one of these edges, you can actually rotate it without the whole thing cracking on you. So we are going to install those while we're at it, and then we're going to talk about the rest of it. Now, the problem is, I think the funny part here is that the Centerdrive, the cutters here are the same price. These USA made cutters are the exact same price as a pair almost to the carbide cutters, although they are far, far better. I will make sure to put a link to these so you guys can have access to them as well. And that is the first major upgrade that anybody should do. But I gotta tell you, if I spent what I spent on this, now I got this very cheap. I actually got this part of a military kit for $60, no joke. It actually came with an Otis kit and this. I know, don't be angry at me, it's just the way it is. All right, so I got this really cheap, but if you paid full price at $120 and then had to pay another 20-ish to get access to the speed steel cutters, you would be rather annoyed, wouldn't you? Yeah, I would. And yes, they do fit and they do retract. That's the easiest fix we can talk about. Now, let's go ahead and go into the back where all of the major problems are. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is something that nobody has ever brought up on a review. This is, if you catch nothing else and you use a Centerdrive, this is the one piece I would try to take home. Notice that in the back you have this piece of metal that holds the extra bit for the Centerdrive. Now this, I completely understand why this exists and why they designed it the way they did. However, it creates a problem that I hadn't experienced until I had to pull a sliver of metal out of something. And I could not figure out for the life of me why I couldn't get enough pressure to hold onto the piece of metal. And this right here is why. If I close the two handles, it stops. So surprisingly, if I put something very thin in it and try to press down, there's actually not enough space for me to squeeze down and put enough pressure on the tip of the pliers. Now, what's interesting is you can fold this out, and now look what happens. Notice it closes an extra, I don't know, you do the math. Let's say 1/8 of an inch. So that 1/8 of an inch offers quite a bit more pressure, allowing you to properly pinch down on something. So as you can see, all I had to do was move that bit out of the way, but that's kind of annoying, wouldn't you say? And if you didn't know this was the case, now you know. That little change might actually make this tool even better for you. But it doesn't solve the problem of the fact that this bit holder stops it from closing completely. Kind of unfortunate. Now, that's the first bit. Now the next part. The file, although mine is actually quite good, I have to admit. I have heard some stories of a lot of other people who seem to have had badly formed files. So that's kind of something that we see happen as well. I will also say that this reamer is actually kind of solid. I like it. I haven't used it much, but I would have really liked to have had the hole that would allow it to make it into a sewing awl as well, but really it's not necessary. It makes sense for this kind of tool because it's about starting holes, you know, so that the center drive bit can actually start screws, etc. Now the next part is one of the things I hate the most about this tool. I hate to say it that way, but I have to bring it up. You have put what you're convincing people to be is a pry tool that pulls out nails in a multi-tool, and it's made of cast steel. Now, I haven't broken it yet, but I've seen a number of pictures of people who have. I would not trust this with the task of actually pulling nails. So I feel like this is kind of a bit of a, I don't know. I mean, the idea is solid in some ways, but inevitably, if it was strong enough to do that, the likelihood is you would put enough pressure to actually damage the pivot itself. So regardless of how you look at it, this is not a very good implement to put into any multi-tool. And even probably the strongest one I've ever seen, which is in the Victorinox Spirit, even that, I really wouldn't want to overdo it. So in this case, being cast, it's a neat tool, a neat idea, but the reality is it's not a good one. And then the last part, of course, is this serrated blade. Now mine actually is quite sharp and I'm pleased with it, but I've also heard that this comes dull. That's not really an issue. You can sharpen it, right? But for me, what makes this kind of a near miss is that it's missing a combination of implements that I would have rather had in it. Now I know it has a center drive and I know it has a spare place for flatheads, but were it to have, where is it? Some of the implements that are present here in this MP600 bladeless, I think it would have been far better. I would have rather had 3 flatheads so that that spare bit area could carry something like, I don't know, a Robeson, a different size Phillips, a Torx potentially. It could be just about anything else, but that would essentially give me additional implements when I need it. Now, you have seen probably the Center Drive Plus, which has a scissor. Unfortunately, that particular scissor of all of the Gerber scissors they have made has one of the shortest arms to actually create some sort of leverage with a long cutting surface. So it doesn't really make all that much sense. If you look at something like this, you'll notice that it actually has quite a long arm relative to how long let me close this up, sorry. How long the blade is. And this is exactly what you want. You want that extra leverage so you can multiply the force and actually make proper cutting. I actually think the scissors on the MP600 are actually quite good. They actually cut very, very well. But they will not work on this tool. I've already seen it done. In order to do it, you actually have to cut this section off in order for it to open properly. But there's another thing. That's serrated blade. I don't really get the point of a blade that takes 5 steps to access. 5-step access is true for everything inside this tool. Starting 1, 2, wait, open all the way, sorry. 2, where's the serrated blade? 3, 4, and then you got to close it. Okay? If you need a serrated blade, more than likely you need it quickly, and you need to cut something that's going to be a pain in the butt. So you have to stop what you're doing to use 2 hands to deploy this thing. It's not really all that practical. You shouldn't have anything in the tool that you need readily or easily, right? Because of how long it takes to actually access them. That's just my opinion, but you know what I would rather have? I would rather have another implement that is inside the MP600 bladeless, and that is this exchanger. Now, what I really do wish they would upgrade to the T-shanks instead of this old style, but I've looked around and you can still buy different blades in this basic idea. So what this is it's basically a replaceable saw holder, and in this video, right after we're done with this, I am going to convert this to what I wish it really was. And that is where we're going to start right now. Now, as you can see, I went ahead and took the tools out of the MP600 bladeless ahead of time so we didn't make this video too long. I am using proprietary tools that I got from Russia, the same guy who created the Loki wrenches that we talked about with the Leathermans, but you don't actually need this. So as part of this, I kind of learned something, and that is you can use probably something like a screw plier, which we've talked about in previous videos, to do this. And there's something really unique about the Gerber that I didn't know, and that only one side needs to be adjusted in order to get the tension correct, because the other side has a cutout, and it's pretty darn cool. Now, as you can see, I'm using proprietary wrenches, but you could very easily use screw pliers. I've talked about them in the past. Some are made by Engineer. They're about 20 bucks or so, but those would work. You probably could also use some locking vice grips to loosen them as well, as long as you take your time. Now, I'm just going to basically dump this out and quickly get the implements in as quick as possible. A lot of times I would just sit and try to make sure I have exactly the dimensions I'm looking for before I put everything back together. But for the purposes of this video, I'm able to just slot it all together and just make it happen. Now, assuming for a second that I had what could be the perfect setup in this tool, I would have a T-shank holder along with some combination of flatheads, preferably one that is really, really large, and then a really fine one, as well as the reamer and a file, but the file being diamond on one side and then crosscut on the other. That would be the ideal, at least for me, with the way this is set up. And then what I'm trying to do is complement the 3 primary tools: the blade, the bit driver, and the pliers. I'm not trying to make this do everything. I don't necessarily want to have scissors, because if I am going to be using this for construction of some sort, I probably need a shear sometimes or a very fine scissor at different times, and it's never going to be this, the same scissor. So it doesn't make sense to have one in here. A saw exchanger of some sort is huge though, and gives me a whole range of capabilities that I otherwise wouldn't have. So even though this is using an old style holder, I really do believe that you can still make it work. And because it's already designed for the Gerber platform, it's easy enough. The nice thing about this is that the MP600 and the Centerdrive both use the same style of pivot, the same size and dimension implements, so it's very easy to mix and match for the most part. Now, as far as getting the screws open, that takes a little bit of work, but the The cool part about the way this pivot is designed is you don't have to use red Loctite to make sure that it holds together. It cleverly fits inside the frame on the other side. So you basically have a relatively secure hold on those components no matter what you do. I really like that about this tool and the MP600 in general. Now, if I hadn't taken them apart, I probably wouldn't have realized that. All right, and there you go. So it's not perfect. I was trying to do it quickly, obviously, and through a viewfinder, but I think you get the idea. At the very least, I feel like this is an improvement over the original because I don't have anything that I'm really actually worried about. And this allows me to eliminate the flathead potentially from being held here, so it gives me additional functionality. I don't need a bottle opener on an item that has multiple flat surfaces. I can open a bottle on just about damn near anything. And I would much rather have small, narrow flatheads when I need them. And the fact that I can now use a saw, potentially whether it's metal saw or wood saw, I can find replacement blades for this. This is what the upgraded Centerdrive should at least look like. Now, obviously we can't fix the problem with the bit holder. I'm still working on a solution for that. But in the meantime, this is already significantly better. Now I need to make some minor adjustments as far as spacers are concerned, but generally speaking, I think this would be a big improvement for most people. I think it's a good tool, there's no question, but the refusal to address the primary issues such as the cutters, it just doesn't make any sense. And it feels like with the Centerdrive Rescue they're coming out with, they're really continuing to that trend, which is just to ignore the problems and not really address them. At the very minimum, upgrade the cutters. I mean, you could easily create a great collaboration with an American company and get cutters that are going to be significantly better than the ones that are already in there. So I don't know how useful this was to someone, but with different variations of the Centerdrive continuing to come out, whether it's the Centerdrive Plus, the Centerdrive Rescue, I feel like showing what it could be, it just makes sense, right? To have these types of tools in here. After all, what was it designed for? Designed for people who use their tools to maintain items regularly or in the trades. And this is a better setup for that. So anyway, thanks for watching and we'll talk again soon.